A month earlier, Ethan thought his life was exactly what he had built it to be: stable, warm, familiar. Every morning he made coffee for two, even before brushing his teeth. Lena, his wife of 8 years, would shuffle into the kitchen, wrapped, in her favorite gray sweater and murmur a sleepy, "Thanks, babe." That was their rhythm: quiet, practiced love. But lately, she'd stopped saying that. The small details were the first signs. Lena's laughter had grown quieter, her kisses briefer. She had started sleeping with her phone tucked under her pillow, and when Ethan reached for her at night, she rolled the other way. He told himself not to jump to conclusions. People changed. With time, marriage matured, lost its shine, but not its strength. Still, his gut whispered things his mind refused to accept. On a Thursday evening, Ethan returned home with her favorite Thai takeout: Penang curry with extra tofu, jasmine, mango sticky rice for dessert. He found her already eating cereal in front of her laptop. "I didn't know when you'd be back," she said without looking up. Her tone wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. "I texted you, twice." "Oh, must have missed it." Ethan smiled tightly and sat beside her, glancing at her screen. She closed the tab too fast. "What were you watching?" "Work stuff. A client campaign meeting." "On YouTube?" Her eyes finally met his, unreadable. "You don't trust me now?" The question landed heavy in the space between them. He could have said no, of course I do, but the truth tasted bitter. That night, while Lena showered, Ethan opened her laptop. His hands trembled. He didn't want to be this man, the snooper, the skeptic. But curiosity had teeth. No passwords. No safeguards. Just one open tab left in the browser. A photo gallery. He clicked through. The first few pictures were of her office party. Then one of her and a man he didn't recognize. Tall, confident smile, hand casually around her waist. Too casually. The caption read, "Guess who's driving me home tonight?" Chase Donovan. Ethan remembered the name from one of her stories. A coworker, a harmless flirt. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He lay beside her, watching her chest rise and fall with each breath, wondering how much of her heart had already left their marriage. The following weekend, things grew stranger. Lena said she had a team bonding night, something about a bowling alley and margaritas. She came home late, too late. Her perfume clung to her clothes like guilt. Ethan pretended to sleep. Lena slipped into bed wordlessly. At work, Ethan tried to focus, but Sophie, his closest colleague, noticed his distraction. "You all right?" she asked, placing a coffee on his desk. He shrugged. "Just tired." "You've looked tired for weeks." He hesitated, then asked, "Can I ask you something personal?" Sophie nodded. "If your partner started acting different, secretive, distant, what would—" "You do?" She studied him. "I'd trust my gut. It's always right when it's screaming." That evening, Ethan drove home slower than usual. The streetlights blurred in his peripheral vision. The world felt off, tilted. When he arrived, Lena wasn't there. Her car wasn't in the driveway. No note, no text. He waited an hour, then 2. At midnight, the door opened. Lena tiptoed in, startled to see him on the couch. "You're up?" "I could ask you the same." "I told you we had drinks." "With who?" "The team. Just the team." "Chase?" She blinked. "Why do you care so much?" Ethan stood, walked over, and held up his phone. On the screen was the photo he had downloaded from her laptop. Her face drained of color. "You went through my stuff?" "Don't. Flip this on me, Lena. I asked you a question." She looked away. "It's nothing. You're being dramatic." Then tell me the truth. Silence filled the room like smoke, dense, suffocating. Finally, she whispered, I don't know what I want anymore. That was the moment Ethan knew. He wasn't crazy. He was just late in noticing how far they had drifted, how love, when neglected, becomes a stranger. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just walked into their bedroom, pulled the wedding ring from his finger and placed it on her nightstand. Behind him, she whispered, trembling, Wait, please, don't pull it out. But he kept walking. Ethan didn't go home the next night. He booked a hotel with beige walls and a broken vending machine. It wasn't much, but it had silence. And right now, silence felt safer than the lies he'd been swallowing. His wedding ring sat in the bottom drawer of the nightstand. He wasn't ready to throw it away, but he couldn't stand the weight of it on his finger either. It felt like wearing someone else's name. Lena hadn't texted, not once. That, somehow, hurt more than anything. At work, Ethan barely spoke. He nodded through meetings, stared past spreadsheets, avoided the break room where couples joked and laughed. He didn't want anyone's sympathy. Sympathy made it real. Sophie noticed, of course. She always noticed. You're not eating again, she said gently, sliding an unopened granola bar across the desk. Wasn't hungry. You said that yesterday. And the day before that. Ethan sighed, ran a hand down his face. She lied to me. For months, and I just missed it. How does that happen? Sophie hesitated, then asked, Do you think it's just emotional or physical? The question felt like a blade under the ribs. I don't know, he said, but I need to find out. That evening, Ethan made a decision. He wasn't going to sit and wait for the truth to show up on his doorstep. He'd follow the signs. Let the facts hurt. At least they'd be honest. He drove back to the house just before midnight. Lena's car was gone. She hadn't answered. His call. He parked around the corner and waited, heart beating faster with each passing minute. At 12:47 a.m., headlights cut across the intersection. Her car. She pulled into the driveway with a practiced ease, like someone who had done this before. Ethan waited until she was inside, then stepped out into the cold night air and walked up to the door. It was unlocked. Lena jumped when she saw him standing in the entryway. You scared me, she gasped. You weren't expecting me. No, why are you here? Better question, Ethan said, voice low. Where were you? She glanced away. I already told you. Team. Dinner. Was Chase there? Her silence answered for her. I followed you last week, he said. Watched you walk into that hotel with him. I know. Lena's face crumbled like dry paper. She dropped her purse and sank into the armrest of the couch. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said, eyes wet. I didn't plan it. I swear. You don't trip and fall into someone else's arms, Lena. I was lonely, she snapped suddenly, surprising both of them. You stopped looking at me like I mattered. You were always working, always tired. I felt invisible. Ethan took a step back, stunned. So you cheated to feel seen? Lena looked down. It wasn't just that. He listened. He asked about my day. He made me feel alive again. Ethan's voice cracked. I did all those things. I was there. Maybe, she whispered, but I didn't feel it anymore. Silence stretched long and thin. Then she said it, the words that would burn into his bones. I think I'm in love with him. Everything inside Ethan went still. The pain wasn't sharp. It was deep, like a pressure in his chest he couldn't relieve. It wasn't anger yet. It was heartbreak in its rawest form. You could have just left me, he said quietly. You didn't have to lie. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did. Later that night, Ethan stood alone in the guest room. The bed smelled like dust and old fabric softener. He stared at the ceiling, trying to understand how a life built on years of trust could unravel in a few scattered months. A text buzzed on his phone. Sophie, just checking in. Hope you're okay. If you need anything, I'm here. Ethan stared at the screen for a long time. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure whether to respond or disappear into silence again. Instead, he set the phone face down. Across the hall. He could hear Lena sobbing softly behind the bedroom door. But he didn't move. Not this time. He wasn't sure what would come next. Divorce? Forgiveness? Rage? But for now, all he had was this moment, and the quiet realization that the woman he loved was still just a few feet away, and yet she felt like a stranger in his own house. Ethan moved out the following week. He left behind the king-sized bed, the matching towels, the photos from their honeymoon in Santorini. He packed only what he needed: clothes, a few books, his old camera. The rest belonged to another version of him, a man who once believed love was unbreakable. Lena didn't fight it. She stood by the window the morning he left, arms crossed over her chest, face pale with regret. He didn't say goodbye. There was nothing left to say. The new apartment was small and quiet. No scent of perfume in the air. No half-filled coffee mugs or passive-aggressive sticky notes on the fridge. Just space. And silence. At first, the silence was unbearable. Then it became therapeutic. He started running again. Mornings, before work. 3 miles turned into 5. With every stride, he tried to leave pieces of her behind. But heartbreak doesn't evaporate. It lingers in shadows, at stoplights, in empty grocery aisles on weekends when no one texts. Sophie, though, didn't disappear. She checked in regularly. Never pushy, never probing, just present. One Thursday afternoon, after another sleepless night, Ethan found himself saying yes when she asked if he wanted to grab coffee. They met at a small cafe tucked between a used bookstore and a flower shop. It smelled like cinnamon and wood polish, the kind of place couples once loved. He pushed that thought away. "So," Sophie said, stirring her latte. "How are you, really?" Ethan exhaled. "I'm somewhere between numb and furious. That's progress, I think." She nodded. "You're allowed to be both. Betrayal doesn't come with a rule book. I keep wondering if there's something I missed, a moment where I could have stopped all of it." "There's nothing you could have done to stop someone else's choice." He looked at her then, really looked, noticed how her words never felt rehearsed, how she didn't fill silence with noise. She just listened. They talked for nearly 2 hours, about guilt, about healing, about starting over without knowing. What comes next? As they stood to leave, Sophie reached out and touched his arm. "Just so you know," she said gently, "you're not broken. You're just bruised." That night, Ethan slept better than he had in weeks. But peace never stays long when truth still hides in the corners. The next morning, a white envelope waited outside his door. No name, no return address. Just his name, printed in careful, block letters. Inside was a single photograph. Lena, Chase, together. But this wasn't from her office or a hotel lobby. This was different. They were standing outside a dark car at night, clearly arguing. Chase had his hand on her arm. Lena looked frightened. On the back of the photo, one sentence was scrawled. "You were never her only secret, D. Ethan's." Breath caught. What was this? A threat? A warning? A prank? He read it again. Never her only secret. He scanned the photo closer. It had a timestamp, nearly 2 months before he'd ever suspected the affair. And then the realization hit him like a cold slap. Someone else had been watching Lena too. Someone who knew more than he did. His first thought was chase. Maybe he wasn't what he seemed. His second? Lena had enemies. His third? Perhaps the truth was far murkier than simple infidelity. He wanted to call her. Ask if she knew someone named D. Ask who took the photo. Ask what she was hiding that he hadn't already uncovered. But he didn't. Instead, he slipped the photo into a drawer, poured himself a drink, and sat in silence. Some wounds needed time. Others needed answers. But all of them hurt just the same. Days passed. Then a week. Ethan kept running, kept breathing, kept pretending things were fine. Until one evening, he checked his mailbox and found another envelope. Inside, just 3 words. She's in danger. No photo this time. No explanation. Just a chill he couldn't shake. He stared at the paper, heart pounding, realizing that whatever pain he thought he'd left behind was only the beginning.